Oh my goodness me, I've just had a sneezing fit. I'm not streaming even, I'm recording. What am I talking about? Anyway, hi, how you doing? I am Cris. And if you're watching this, you're either someone who's interested in this sort of thing, because I'm going to throw it on my YouTube later, or you are Headphone Team, which is an awesome name, considering mine is Prestigious Schema 38 on Reddit, because I seem to have accidentally mashed the Make Me a Name button. So, shit. Anyway, no pretty thumbnails for the video. If you're here watching it, then greedy. I don't do thumbnails, I'm not into that nonsense. Okay, so anyway, Headphone, you asked me some questions regarding Unreal Engine 5. I don't know why, but that's cool, because it turns out that I'm actually able to answer your questions, so that's awesome. So, are there any other systems or things I should set up beside the following? Data layers, world partition, level instances, and HLOD. Okay, well, all of these things are important, okay, and can't be done in some cases until you've actually built something to go inside of them, even if it's blockouts. This is the first section that you need to really focus on here. I've done some open world stuff myself a few times, and one of the things that is most important at this point is getting a cohesive idea of where everything is going to be. Okay, so what I mean by that is, you know, an idea of where Area 1's going to be, where Area 2's going to be, where Area 3's going to be, because not everything is going to be end-to-end filled with action and activity. Once you've done that and you've kind of worked out where those items are going to be in your world, then you've got a much better idea of how you're going to connect those together, because you're still at the early architecture / blockout phase by the sounds of things. So what you really need to do is decide what goes where in your world. A 10 kilometre by 10 kilometre map is enormous, like way bigger than you may realise. I've got some examples here to show you from what I'm working on at the moment. So let me just take you into this island, which is going to load while I'm endlessly talking and talking and talking. Now, this map here, at the minute, I think it's 15 kilometres by 15 kilometres. Technically, it was only supposed to be 8 by 8, but I accidentally expanded it. But as there's nothing in there, it doesn't really make any difference to me. Okay, one of the benefits of an open world is if there's nothing in there, who cares? Now, this one that's 8 by 8, part of the way I got around this was by the fact that I'm using islands. Okay, so even though I've got large islands where there's a lot of stuff on some of them, they're still islands, so the majority of the area is empty. If you're looking at having large areas inside of your open world that are basically in between the main zones, this is the thing that you really have to think about all of the time. You know, what's going to be there for people to look at, because people notice fast enough as soon as the detail level drops. Now, you can use PCG or some other forms of instantiating, you know, or generating kind of tools in order to make something to go in there, but it will look very soulless. Okay, you have to use them in alongside your artistic skills as well. So, you know, just be aware of that. Be aware of the time that you're going to need to do this as well, because if this is a personal project and you ain't getting paid, you've got a lot of time you're going to be spending on this. Now, I'm a solo developer when I'm not earning a crust. I consult directly for Epic Games, funnily enough. And I mean, if you look at my world, there's a lot of it hidden, a lot of it unloaded, all this kind of thing, but you can kind of get a sense of scale here. And it's a very, very, very heavy project. But what I've done is I've spaced things out. So, for example, if I go to a much faster speed here, and I'm not going to bother loading too much in, I'll just go to unlit as well. So this is an area up here where the lighthouse is, where things are going to happen. Down here there's an area where these stones are that's unloaded, where things happen. Here's an area where things happen. There's holes in the landscape which will give you an idea of where things are going to be happening, okay? Because what I've done is I've taken my time and I've developed my landscape, cut holes into it, and basically taken my time with this. Now, once I've basically instituted these, put in these like zones, what I've done is I've gone in and blocked them out. So for example, the lighthouse up here and the main building, they didn't start out this way, so I wasn't planning out my data layers, world partition stuff, and level instancing at this point. What I was doing was coming up with a cohesive kind of narrative in my head for why these things are here, what they're doing there, and so on. So I'm kind of trying to look at it from an artistic point of view as well. Now, once you've got these kind of things cemented in your mind, you'll be drawing, taking notes, and also throwing blocks down just to build your shapes. Then, build any landscapes around that, not the other way. If you're using real-world landscapes, then, you know, obviously you have to go the other way. But what we're doing here is we're going to try and fit our landscapes and our environments around our key areas. So as an example for that, let's say I've got an asylum over here that I needed in the middle of the sea, you know, because it was supposed to be a secure asylum. So if I unhide it, you can see that what I did was I built an island that's surrounded by rocks that limits the visibility for when you get there. And then I built the asylum into the rock. And to do that, you don't build the rocks first and then dig a hole in them. You go the other way, and you know, you build your asylum and then build the rocks around that instead. And so you end up getting, you know, a shape that appears more natural and looks like it's been dug out of. So always pay attention to these things as well. Now, regarding world settings and things like that, a couple of things that you'll need to pay attention to. One, it should be set up automatically, but ensure that your player character has a streaming source, and ensure that the streaming source is named correctly. So if I go to my player character, here we go. By the way, you don't get pop-ups with words and things, you have to watch the video, sorry. Okay, so if I go to my BP player character, and this is just a child blueprint of my main player character. Child blueprint's really important because it means the other guy who's working on gameplay can do the work, and it'll just automatically propagate to your child blueprint. Takes a minute or two to load. My project file's 185 gigs, so give me a minute. It's a very fast system too. I could press pause, couldn't I? I'm not going to press pause. This is how I teach. Anyway, that's why people like my lessons, what can I say? Okay, so blah blah blah, damage, blah blah blah, nonsense. Right, here we go. So if I scroll down, you can see I've got my world partition streaming source here. Okay, I don't really need to change anything on here. All this is doing is letting it know that, you know, I'm coming in, a streaming source, my player, and it's going to stream the world around me. You'll notice I've set my target grid to main grid here. Now if I go to edit and go to my, they're over here now, I keep forgetting I moved them years ago. World settings, you can see here my grid name is world grid. Now if you're wondering about my own grid settings, then for the majority, because I'm using a lot of fog, I really don't mind pop-in because of the nature of my game, and because I'm using HLODs for things that are far, far away. If I put on my preview grids, you'll see that I actually have a very small preview grid. Okay, and that's because I'm letting large items already stay loaded, or using HLODs for those, because we can just tick, you know, do not stream. And for other ones I'm using HLODs, or I'm using swap out meshes, where basically I've built a specific load of meshes that look like it's the right kind of thing, and I swap them out when I get to a distance. Okay, so blueprint stuff. Now, some other things to bear in mind are things that you may have read already on the Reddit, like /Unreal Engine forum, board, whatever. So make sure you have no ticking blueprints that you don't need ticking. So go with your blueprints, and you know, always, always, always. Hang on, I'll just show you here. I don't know if it's so good on this one, but let's have a look. There should be, if I go to BP player character self, go over here, you know, it should be a thing like you can turn off tick. Actually, this is a character blueprint, so this is the worst possible example I could have given you. 1 minute. Oh yeah, I'm still on the massive, massive screen as well, because this is what my screen looks like. Sorry, dude. Let's make this a little bit smaller, just for your benefit. So, that one. There we go. Now you can see stuff. If I go to my industrial catwalks, something like that. Let's have a look. I must have something here. Oh, my blueprints. Wow, he could have paused and gone there, couldn't he? Could have done, didn't. Okay, here we are. BP boat. Let's open that up. Open full blueprint editor. So you want to make sure that you're turning off various things in here, like start with tick enabled. So just, this is a very old blueprint that I'm not even using at the minute. So click, turn that off, because we don't want that running unless you have an event linked to your tick, and you should never have anything linked to event tick. You should always use a timer. Okay, let's look at some other questions that you had, because I love questions. How to plan before building in the context of performance. Space your main important objects. Okay, so as an example here, if I was to go to my main map, pop. So I've got this jetty down here that I part loaded in for you. Okay, so this is my key and my jetty, and I've got a lot of stuff down here that's actually a lot more intensive than it looks. Now I've got foliage turned off at the moment, don't worry about that. But these things, okay, where I need lots of details, are all loaded. Now, because I've got another area up here that's high detail, okay, what I've done is I've spaced it far enough apart that my grid will completely have unloaded that section by the time I go to the next section. So what I'm doing is I'm bearing in mind a safe distance to spawn and unspawn. And bear in mind that my island's got stuff under the surface as well as on top of the surface. So I want to take that into account as well. Now inside of my lighthouse, for example, there's some occlusion meshes in front of the observatory over here, and the observatory is fully loaded by the time I get over here, based on the fact that I've got all of these different meshes set to appear at different times and so on. Now, one of the ways I make sure that meshes appear at different times is to use a cull volume as well. Now, if I type in cull, we should get a cull pairs. Here we are, cull distance volume. If you've never used the cull distance pairs before, it's very worth having a look at. If you've never used it, just close that down. It's very worth looking at if you haven't used it, okay? You get a detail panel here. It's got basically your size and cull distance pairs, so size to associate with the cull distance, less than 10,000. Cull distance, size, less than 10,000, cull distance 0. So basically you put different pairs into this, and what it'll do is it'll start culling away tiny details, getting larger. Anything that's inside of this volume when you step inside of this volume. So this is another tool that we can use, and this is handy in places like inside of the lighthouse keeper's house, where I've got lots of small books and decorations. That thing's going to hide them. So we're going to look at this, even though it's old tech. Right, how to minimise having to redo building areas? Very good question. So, heading into spoiler territory slightly here, so we'll go underground to make it a little bit easier. And I'm going to go over here. There, okay, because if I'm here, we're going deeper underground. There we go, sorry, I am working on my own a lot. It tends to make for the madness. Anyway. Here we go. So, this building here, as an example. Now, what I've had to do is I've had to build this a couple of times. Okay, so rather than rebuilding it over and over and over again, what I've got is I've got one main model, which is a BPI level instance. And what I did was I constructed my building in an empty level, and then I did a right click, went to level, create packed level actor, and then I call that BPI mansion, BPI whatever, etc. Now, if I go to my empty tutorial level here, there we go, hush secret teleport area. Over here in my content browser, I've got basically these MegaAssemblies. That's what they're called when you start making these. You've seen them in, what do you call it, Epic's thing where they show them off back in 5.0, I think. Anyway, inside of my not merged meshes, it's like MegaAssemblies. Is it my MegaAssemblies? Yep, here we are. Inside of here, I've got all of my big structures that use a lot of repeating geometry. So, for example, caves, where I use a lot of repeating geometry, buildings use a lot of repeating geometry, and so on and so forth. And these are all things that usually you wouldn't reuse a lot of because they're incredibly, thousands and thousands of pieces in them and so on. They're very, very, very intensive. But you can use them. So, for example, here we are, BPI Temple. I don't even know if I'm still using that or not. And here we go. This is an area that I needed that was just a lot of parts. And so what I did was I selected them all once I was done. I made sure that they were all more or less the same part over and over again. So you can see I've got a lot of repeating bits. And I did a right click, level, create packed. Okay, and that way you start to get lots and lots and lots of reusable parts. So for example, this, okay, I did an awful lot of stuff on building reusable assemblies like these, or this, okay, because I needed large areas that I can use and repeat over and over again. Let's see what other ones I've got here. Oh yeah, even simple things like shelving. Okay, BPI, shelving. So you saw inside the warehouse, and you probably saw that I had lots and lots of different variations of shelves. That's because what I've done is I've made these BPI shelves, okay? And to initially furnish them, I used a PCG, so the procedural generation system, and then I took the PCG and converted it into basically flat mesh, instance meshes, and then I right-click converted them to a BPI. So that's why I've got all these, and I can use all of these high detail assets as many times as I choose, really, because, you know, witchcraft and NVIDIA. We don't need to know exactly how it works unless we're going into the C++, and I fully don't intend to. As long as it's working, that's all I care about. What does this mean? Well, it means we can build our open world systems, so that's wonderful. Okay, dear Mr. Beastman, I'm on the wrong window, there we go. How does all of this change for multiplayer? It doesn't really. So, if it works for single player, to be perfectly honest, there's no reason it won't work for multiplayer. I mean, if you're trying to get it to a point where you've got like 700 players all on the screen at once, then maybe. But to be perfectly honest, there's no reason why. The only thing you've got to remember is that if you're doing an open world, you've got to think about it logically, you know? Do you really need an open world? Do you need people to be that far apart? You might need a slice of a world, maybe, you know, rather than a full open world, because one, you'll be able to make it quicker and iterate on it much, much faster. Two, it gets very frustrating in a multiplayer world if you're expecting to play with other people and they're 8 kilometres away, you know, unless you've got a really fast way of getting to them, and that's your biz, not mine. But, you know, this is something to think about. Open world, does it need to be open world, or can we do it like Alan Wake did, where it looked open world, but it really, really wasn't? So give that some thought, it's very, very important. So, the gist of the thing makes sense anyway. World partition, basically I've showed you some of the settings I use for that, make it easier. For level instances, these things that I'm dragging in, these are level instances. Okay, that's literally what they do on the tin. See that? Marvellous. Okay, I use these things a lot. HLODs, don't worry about them yet, okay? Worry about the HLODs in time, once you've built stuff. And the good thing about worrying about HLODs in time is if you use that method I told you about, where we're going to space important areas apart, so that, you know, it's completely unloaded by the time the next grid loads, then it's going to be a lot easier to break chunks into HLODs as well, which is going to make your life a lot easier. Another thing you could do as well is you could take those entire areas and you could lock them inside of a level layer. So, you know, over here I've got my data layers. I could make a data layer specifically for, you know, I don't know, the docks or whatever, and then I can unload and load it that way. But to be perfectly honest, most of the time I'm just going to use the world partition system and let stuff load up and unload that way. If I need to effect a massive change in my system in one go, then yeah, I can do that, but I'll come back to it. Okay, so another thing then, because, you know, it's always great seeing someone taking on a massive amount of work and having a happy smile to do it, because that's what I do, and I think that's great. I'm not being sarcastic or anything, I genuinely mean that, and I wish you the very best of luck. Is there are some tools that you will benefit from purchasing rather than just outright developing yourself, because some people make tools that are really, really good, and, you know, it's something that you need to keep in mind. So, for example, if I just go to the edge of here, one of the tools that I really quite like, but I'm not using myself at the moment because it's not 100% great for, what do you call it, open world stuff that I was doing, is I use Waterline, and Waterline allows me to just basically drag in and start using water if I want to. You'll see it in a second, there it is, okay, so water. And if I get my details panel back, because I shut it, and just scroll down, there we go, live ocean. So we can do all sorts of cool things using this tool. It allows us to make very realistic water. We can turn on wakes, we can turn on waves, all these kind of things. They've done all the calculations for us so that we do not have to, and it even has it underwater in it. Okay, so my advice, try and avoid developing your own water shader if you don't need to. The time you save is worth more than the money that it's going to cost. If it costs $50, think about it, that's 2 hours work for you if you're earning $25 an hour. and you're a game developer, charge at least $25 an hour. Okay, next thing is, oh yeah, there's some other water examples here as well. So there were some free ones I think that were given away. Let's see what I can find. Oh, they're here somewhere. Anyway, you get the point. There's loads of water tools. Have a look at them all. If you're not sure, I mean, the Tropical Ocean tool was free a short while ago, and I've been using that, and I think it's great because look, it develops wake and all sorts of things. Really light, much lighter than the other one. Not great at detail compared to the other one, but it's still good enough. Other things, this sky over here, this is Ultradnamic Sky. To get Sky working inside of this, all I do is I go down here to my Ultradynamic Sky folder, go to my blueprints, drag in Ultradynamic Sky, drag in some weather. It'll automatically start to rain because I live in England. And then over here on the right hand side, so you can't see this, I'll just change the weather preset to whatever I want. So maybe a sandy dust storm. There you go. And that's how easy it is to affect the weather. It's not difficult, basically. I can also change the time, so make it 6 o'clock in the morning, or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 7 o'clock at night, midnight, whatever. Okay, we can do all this. I'll just turn this back on to a nice partly cloudy evening, and there's some stars. See? So very, very easy to get the weather working. My advice would be, you know, get a Sky plugin, get a water plugin if you're using water. Apart from that, the rest of the stuff, just build. Okay, build, and you'll be done, and you'll feel happy. So just do it. Do it for Cris. Make me happy. Yeah, you got this. Any more questions? Seriously, just, you know, as long as you don't mind me like posting them up on YouTube, because I'm afraid this is how I work. I don't do letters. I don't do long posts. Yeah, sorry. Anyway, good luck. Get back to me, and any more questions, and I'll make another one of these, and that will be fun. Oh yeah, and get a space mouse if you can. They're silly but fun. Kind of expensive, but I lost my original one. God knows what I did with it. But it allows you to basically do this sort of thing, which is great. Really quite relaxing as well. Whee! There you go. Anyway, enough of that. So take care, and ta-ta for now.